Mental illness. When you hear that, all that may come to mind is images of people in straitjackets locked away in hospitals. But mental illness affects so many more people than that. In fact, over 1 in 5 Canadians suffer from a mental disorder of some kind. Imagine your own group of friends. It's been said that we each have 5 people we consider closest to us. Now imagine that at least one is affected in some way. Or think about your own school of Leopoldus. We have around 1,000 kids here, so imagine that almost an entire grade's worth of people could be affected by mental illness. So mental illness isn't always a huge display of wild, crazy, uncontrollable emotions. It manifests in plenty of other ways. One of the biggest of which is depression, often called the common cold of mental illness. Approximately 10% of the Canadian population over the age of 18 suffer from a depressive disorder, which adds up to 2.5 million people. And while those stats are just adults, depression is a mental disorder that highly affects youth and children in the same way because of the intense pressure of growing up. But doesn't everyone really kind of suffer from depression sometimes? Isn't that just sort of being really sad a lot? Well, to put it frankly, the answer is no. But we should talk about what depression really is and how it actually works. We'll start with sadness, which, contrarily to depression, is an emotion that is simply a reaction to life's ongoings. While it is true that everyone deals with this at some point, depression is completely different. Depression changes the way you think and the way you feel and the way you act. It has been described as a black hole that sneaks into and affects every single little aspect of your life. Depression can make you feel unmotivated and too depleted to do anything in life, which means you can't often function in school, work, or whatever else, which is what makes it a disorder. And depression can be experienced in other ways, too. It could make you feel completely empty and apathetic, or it could make you angry and restless. It all depends. And the end point of depression isn't always great. While depression is a mental illness that can often end on its own, it can also end in something terrible: suicide. All of the despair and hopelessness can be overwhelming sometimes and can result in people looking for a way out. So, if there's so many people suffering this awful way leading to terrible consequences, how can we identify those suffering? Well, it's difficult with depression because for it to be a mental illness, it needs to persist over a distinct period of time. And regular depressed or sad moods happen frequently with everyone, so immediately diagnosing before it's really an issue could be more detrimental than good. Some signs to remember when wanting to see if you or a loved one could be depressed or at risk are appetite or drastic weight changes, feeling helpless, hopeless, or worthless, unable to do regular everyday activities, troubles concentrating, making decisions, or sleeping, thoughts of self-loathing, death, guilt, or reckless decisions. On top of this, depressed people at risk of suicide may make outcries for help that seem like they're just needy, but remember, they actually need your help.